Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one, I'm going to talk about my starter build. Now, I've been on the fence when it comes to the three different builds I think will be top performing in 3.24 as minion builds. One of them is obviously the fantastic build made by Previ himself, which is the Blink Arrow Mirror Arrow build. I originally set out to make my own guide for this, and we came up with a really nice variation of a low budget style, made a leveling guide for it. The problem was, as soon as I started doing medium budget, I felt like this is too similar to Previ's version. I spoke to Previ and he felt the same, so I've decided not to make a written guide on it because they are just too similar if you exclude the low budget approach. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link in the descriptions down below to my POB for the low budget that I made for the Guardian, and also make sure that you guys can check out Previ's fantastic content, as he's also been posting up a nice document, fully in-depth information there, covering what you need to do, what you need to go for, and how many of basically all of the POBs he has available. So do check that out, and also a link in the descriptions below to Previ's YouTube channels. Do make sure you don't miss out. This right here is the POB for BAMA Guardian, which is a same bow and quiver as Previ has in his versions. I've made some changes to go for a little bit more cheaper approach to it and running a simplistic approach to it with instinct, spell suppression being oiled, and having it just generically cheaper and easier to gear, and going for Eldritch Battery. There's two ways to solve the mana issue generally when it comes to the approach of playing the Blink Arrow Mirror Arrow build on a low budget. I felt like the Eldritch Battery would make more sense rather than oiling things like Dreamer, going in for cost reductions, having a bunch of mana regen on your gear. However, there is one little backup plan that acts as a solution for both this approach and the original one that Previ has, and that is simply remove precision from your auras and run a Clarity. And the reason for this is very simple. By running a Clarity aura, you're then able to have less pressure on these things and sustain the actual mana cost of the ability. Now, whichever route you do decide to take, there's a couple things to point out when it comes to this build. He has a ton of different POBs, including Necromancer versions and whatnot, which should do a bit more damage in the high-end game version compared to the Guardian. And the reason I decided for a Guardian is because of the Radiant Crusade node. This node gives you the Sentinel of Radiance, which is essentially carrying and hard carrying your actual leveling experience in the campaign moving forward, which is why I opted for a Guardian. This allows us to have less pressure on our approach, because when you play the game, the recommendation is to use something like Rolling Magma, having Holy Flame Totem, Flame Wall, whatever kind of style you want to use, up until you get the Absolution skill gem. That means you're specking out to this route over here and going up for the Sacrifice node, and in here you would, during the leveling portion, actually pick up something in the lines of a Convocation CDR for the actual Sentinel Radiant, and then you would move through the life nodes into the Redemption node. So here's the problem. Once you've done this and picked up Enduring Bond, you have this covered, you're at the normal lab. You can farm for the gem at this point. You can also purchase it from the market. You might also not be playing the build as a league starter on the very same day the league launches, and that means the gems should be more readily available for the community. All of these things allows you to use the actual Blink Arrow bombarding clones. Don't use the regular Blink Arrow though. It's not worth it. Once you have that, my experience was it was fine to level with, going with this kind of tree, but once you have the gem, obviously you'll need a bow to start with, you're going to want to bum rush all the way down to Avatar of the Hunt. The reason for this is because this mastery node here allows this to be significantly better. My experience was that as soon as I got this mastery node, I actually stopped using the Sentinel Radiant when I was leveling, because a simple bow such as a Quill Rain was actually clearing and making me zoom through the maps or campaign significantly faster than spending the time to summon my Radiant and then putting this guy out with Convocation. It was absolutely insane what an experience that was. So that's how the tree leveling approach that I was doing is working. A couple of small notes I do want to point out, since I'm no longer going to have an actual written guide for this. The Mirror Arrow Prismatic Clones has an innate reduction of damage taken when they're summoned. As you can see here, they are very squishy, but they take almost no damage. This allows you to run a Guardian's Blessing support with haste for them, and also having them proc the Culling Strike and Feeding Frenzy. The problem, though, however, with this is obviously that now we're in a position where we are casting our Blink Arrow consistently, and then we're also using our Mirror Arrow to have that haste. Maybe you only want to use that for clearing rares, or you maybe want to use it for bosses. Ultimately, you want to use this quite often, no matter how you twist and turn this. Some people might want to use it for every pack to keep up the haste because you're going to outrun the radius of it. Keep in mind that it's going to be a little bit click heavy. Outside of that, the blink arrow itself, as all of my POBs do, they always showcase the single target setups. You're not going to want to run conk effect when you're clearing, because this will contradict the increased area of effect and the sake of clearing as many monsters as possible. Now, obviously, there's quite a few different options that one can run with this. I would arguably say that potentially increased area would be enough if your gear is covering. I'm just not sure if I'd like to promote that. And since I'm discontinuing the idea of having my own written guide, I'm just going to leave what I have in the links to the descriptions below and simply refer to you guys to the mastermind behind the original creation of this build, which is Previ. I went for a safeguarding golem. If it's too expensive, run a normal one. I went to race Spectre and Animate Guardian this POB. There's some information about this, including AG gear setup as well. So you'll have all the information you'll need to play this version if you choose to do so. But enough of me. Let's talk about Previ stuff. I don't want to take over his entire video here, so do make sure you check the link in the description to his content. But in here, you'll see a showcase of the actual approaches running in 323. And it's just a fantastic build. This was great lastly. I wanted to make a guide of this lastly, but decided to play the build first before doing anything. And here we are today. But this will very likely be one of my starter builds. I have yet to decide, though. And in here, he has a link to a document which will cover information that you want to use when it comes to following the guide. There's descriptions of why we're using certain things. I mentioned the build being a bit spammy, and the reason it's spammy is because we're running fresh meat, which is why the build is speccing into duration nodes. And because it's speccing into duration nodes, we're then going to be in a position where we have 10% of that duration becoming the effective uptime of the buff from fresh meat. And because of all of this, we are going to be running that. And that's why it's very spam, because you have to cast the ability once every 4.6 seconds. So a little click heavy, if you will. A little cool note in this section. I believe I saw it here recently. Where was it? Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. The mirror helmet. This is something I just had a conversation before recording this. I talked to Previ, and it's very likely, depending on the Spectre outcome, that I will be doing a mirror helmet craft for BAMA. Whether or not I play it doesn't matter, but it is for rich people only, as you can see here. But it's very likely that I'll be doing a guide, or well, sorry, not the guide. I'll be very likely doing a mirror craft for the build as well, depending on the outcomes of the information we get leading into launch. Outside of this, I am also on the fence on maybe I should be playing something in the lines of Face having the Iron Mass Lightning Necromancer. Now, I might play this instead. Main reason for this is that I am a big fan of Iron Mass. I was actually the very first content creator, to my knowledge, that played with this ability when it became available in the league when it was released. However, it has been kind of lackluster in terms of performance for the most part. The only route that I can think of that I didn't go down to was the Lightning style. This is something Face has been known for from the SRS part. Fantastic guy creator. I've been having an ongoing conversation with him. And basically, the low-budget style, I've made some very small variations to compared to what he's been doing. However, I made quite some drastic changes when it comes to the medium and higher budget, where I made the build significantly tankier at the cost of a lot of damage. And it feels fine to me, in my opinion, because the feeling with this is that you're going to be casting skeletons similar to the BAMA, where fresh meat needs to be covered, so you have a handful of seconds duration of your fresh meat support, and skeletons are very squishy, so they're surviving based on Blessed Rebirth, which lasts 4 seconds. So essentially, you want to cast new skeletons every 4 seconds. So what I did was I sacrificed a lot of my damage to get more defenses. But GHAZZY, come on, it says 66,000. Don't trust the numbers on PvP, okay? So first and foremost, what we're doing here is actually pretty cool. This specific build is using a petrified blood, which means that we now have our max HP being 50%, but our max HP is actually full, but it stops at 50% from regen. What this allows us to do is actually benefit from the leeching that our Necromancer minions are providing, to the point where we are over-leeching. Since we never hit max HP, we're consistently over-leeching, so any damage we take is going to be compensated because of this, and we're also speccing into instant leech, allowing 10% of the damage that our minions are doing to be, that they're leeching to be instant as well, allowing us to have an insane amount of sustain. The reason I decided to go for this variation of Face builds is that we are simply going to be in melee range. We're lightning-based. This means we're going to be using the Smite ability. This means that we're going to be hitting enemies with melee attacks, on top of which being forced to do so, because once you hit an enemy with your weapon, your skeletons will deal triple damage. I'm absolutely a huge fan of the idea of playing Iron Mask. I've always been on the fence when it comes to March of the Legion styles, so we'll see how it goes, but I'll definitely be digging into this one a bit more on stream before launch, and it's very likely that I'll either play Previ's BAMA build, starting with my own version for low budget into Previ styles, or I might play my version of Face builds. But I do want to give a big shout out to Face for this as well. Fantastic guy creator, and I'm going to leave links in the descriptions below to his content as well. And his versions, I've seen them pushing up to 150 million shaper DPS on the high budget. I did take that down a lot in my version, so I'm going to show you the Lightning version of high budget that I did. It only reaches 109 million shaper DPS. There's still some tweaks and whatnot to be done, but this one is very, very, very tanky, again, with the idea of Petrified Blood. But Face builds was doing about 150 million. This is, of course, before you enable things like, you know, a Vol skill, pushing the build up to 181 million. Whereas Face would be sitting on 300 million. So it all depends on how tanky versus how much damage you want to do. I think that the little bit more defenses would be better once you reach over 100 million shaper DPS. That's just my take. So a big shout out to both Previ and Face for these two fantastic builds. I made some variations on this, and I think that the Iron Mask one is the one that made the most changes to when it comes to the higher budget versions. But I want to make sure these complicators get some big shout outs in the channel, and their links in the description below, so do check them out. Let me know in the comments below which build you are starting for 3.24. I still can't decide whether or not I'm going for the Necromancer Face or if I'm doing Guardian BAMA. I'm leaning towards the Necromancer Iron Mask simply because I want to play Spectres, but we haven't seen that information as of the time of this recording. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, as always, stay safe. Bye.